Edward VII was the King of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland, and the Emperor of India for a short reign lasting 9 years. Our project focuses on his reign and his travels through the Indian subcontinent. Bertie, as he was known, was born on November 9, 1841, in Buckingham Palace. He did not have a joyful childhood due to the high standards set for him by his parents and the uncomfortable relationship fostered between them. Queen Victoria also believed that her son, the heir to her throne, was incompetent and indiscreet and gave him no responsibilities in preparation for her vacancy. Due to this, the Prince of Wales spent his time self-indulging and garnering the image of a playboy and was caught in multiple scandals. Queen Victoria, the Empress of India, however, never visited the Indian subcontinent and learnt the culture on a second-hand basis, while her sons were permitted to tour the country, visiting multiple cities. In 1875, Prince Edward was given the responsibility of a state visit tour of India, where he participated in hunting and a magnificent ceremony. It was on these tours that the Prince of Wales understood his charismatic and approachable demeanor, which, contradicting his parents' belief, brought him popularity and support.
The cultural and political impact affect Bertie's life according to his position in the crown. As Prince of Wales, Edward had an adolescent and young adult very close to the public due to the lifestyle he led, which was very close to parties, gambling, women, and the good life of London aristocracy. Even after marriage Princess Alexandra, this behavior continued, leading him to have different relations with other women. Among the actress, Lily Langtry and Raphael Churchill, Mother of Wisdom, can be highlighted. Politically, he did not have a large participation as the Prince of Wales, because of the decision of Queen Victoria, since she considered him to be someone with little capacity for his job.
His intellect, alas, is weak. He listens to nothing you tell him, but seems in a sort of dreaminess, which alarms us for his brain.
It was not until his coronation that he was able to do many things that he always wanted. After being crowned, Edward VII decided to be the king that UK needed for the early 20th century. When Queen Victoria died, a trend began in all Europe against the monarchies, and Bertie played an especially important role in preventing the crown dissolution. Being a charismatic person, he used that to his advantage to be in constant contact with the people. Unlike Victoria, Edward was a king who appears very often with the British, even with those who are not in favor of him, like the president of the Labour Party, for example. As a political environment, Edward put a political power that he always waited for so long, being one of the best acts the trips that he made to Germany and France in 1903 and the improvement of the British Army.
The economic situation Britain was standing on at this point in time was as strong as it could get. With the Industrial Revolution marching on in previous years, the country had a better reason to grow the empire, more specifically, getting involved with India. Shortly after the Industrial Revolution came to an end, around the 1840s, a fresh face was needed in India, and this is where Bertie comes in. The success of his travels to India proved that he was more than the playboy gambling prince everyone thought he was back in Britain. In a moment in history where India was being fed up with the Brits, which consequently created the Indian Revolt of 1857, Edward demonstrated that the two countries would still benefit from each other without the necessity of being enemies with one another. In turn, this allowed great relations between the two countries, improving the image not only of himself but of the Queen as well, as she was then titled the Empress of India, creating closer ties between both countries. Not only was he a peacemaker and a fresh face for the country, he was also what people would call a libertarian in many aspects. Short after his reign started, it became public that he constantly asked help from friends for his finances, these friends being Jewish people. The problem with this is that at the time, in very early 1900s, anti-Semitism was already a thing, and the king being friends with Jewish people was frowned upon. However, it was very clear that the king didn't care about that, just the same way he didn't treat black Indian people any different. To support this argument, it is also important to note that during his reign, he opened the Royal College of Music, famously saying the words, "Class can no longer stand apart from class. I claim for music that it produces that union of feeling which I much desire to promote." It was very clear that Bernie was an open-minded guy that didn't care about color, race, or status. However, contrary to this, he also had some traditional views. As forward-looking as he was, under his short reign, he didn't allow women to have the same voting rights as men did in the country. And while this was still a standard in previous years, by the time Edward became king, there were already countries allowing women to vote, such as Australia in 1895 and Canada in 1916. Contrary to this, Britain did not allow women to vote until after 1928. Similar to this, he didn't change the process of divorce, in which men were able to get divorced if they found their wives cheating, but the wives were not able to get a divorce if they found their husbands cheating, as long as the woman was not married with any other person. Although he proved to be forward-looking and a good face for the country, Edward fell short in some other aspects, more specifically with equal rights for women.
Although he proved to be very forward-looking and a good face for the country, Edward fell short in some other aspects, more specifically with equal rights for women. In India, King Edward was successful as he treated the poor with kindness and humility, rather than by force and embarrassment. He also protested against the usage of the word niggers by the British, by stating, "Because a man has a black face and a different religion than our own, there's no reason why he should be treated as a brute." Additionally, he was responsible for the peaceful relations between England and France, as well as the reform of the British Army and Navy after the Second Boer War, pressing for the reform of the Army Medical Service and the modernization of the Home Fleet. However, due to his short reign and lack of support from his predecessors, King Edward did not have time to create more change for his nation or for the Indian Empire.
Edward VII was a monarch who managed to gain the appreciation of the British. By changing the mode of the crown as it became more attached to the public, they felt a special connection with Bertie, this being one of the main legacies that he had with the crown, especially at the time when most of the monarchies died in Europe. Another contribution with the crown was the revelation of Buckingham Palace, and making it look more like a government palace and not as a praise to the king in duty, a trend that continues until these days. During his reign, Edward can well handle the changes that occurred in the UK during the early 20th century, characterizing himself as a pacifist, trying to have a good relationship with other countries in Europe, being a key character in the formation of Triple Entente and the improvement of the British Army as a division of the world. The image of the British people with other countries like France and Russia considerably improved, and he was always very close to the British people. Bertie dies on the 6th of May of 1910, being the first monarch to be publicly buried, so that everybody could pay him honors. He also received his gratitude not only for the Britain, the greatest came from European and American and even Jewish countries. Despite his lustful life, his son described him as a good father and a great leader in the few years that he had the crown. Although there were very few acts that he performed, these are remembered by the British as the king who changed the way of seeing the monarchy in the new United Kingdom.